أفادت وكالة رويترز بوصول الشابة السعودية رهف القنون إلى مطار تورونتو في كندا التي منحتها حق اللجوء. الشابة السعودية كانت قد فرت من أسرتها بعد رحلة للعائلة إلى الكويت، حيث استقلت طائرة متجهة نحو تايلاند بهدف طلب اللجوء مبدئيا في أستراليا.
But she's had a very long and tiring journey, and so she would prefer not to take questions today.
Well, for more reaction, we have reached out to a former ambassador from Canada to Saudi Arabia. David Chatterson was the ambassador from 2009 to 2011. He joins us now from Kelowna, BC. Sir, thank you so much for making time for us today. It's been a remarkable story to follow. I want to begin by getting your impressions on how that scene unfolded at Toronto's Pearson Airport, where you've got this young woman, a refugee to Canada. She's wearing a UN hat. She's wearing the Canada sweatshirt. The minister has her arm around her. What did you make of that whole scene?
Well, very heartwarming, very political, frankly.
Why do you say that? Why do you say political?
Well, fundamentally, we have injected in this case, I think, a very strong domestic political element into a refugee persecuted person situation. And I'm not sure that's always the best thing to do when what we're trying to do is to manage very sensitive and very difficult circumstances of some 25 million people in the world.
And so what's your concern? Why is it not necessarily the best approach?
Well, UNHCR believes or has a number of 25-point-something million refugees in the world, most of whom are in much worse circumstances than this unfortunate teenager from Saudi Arabia. And yet, our Prime Minister has chosen to offer her immediate sanctuary. That's going to be, I think, initially viewed by Saudi Arabia as a very concerted effort on our part, or on the Prime Minister's part, to insert himself into this story. And frankly, as your reporter alluded to, I think it also sets a very dangerous precedent, which is, what happens the next time a teenage girl or adult woman from Saudi Arabia that flees her family and declares herself to no longer be a Muslim. Does that mean automatic sanctuary? One would almost conclude so from the actions taken in this case.
So I want to pull apart a couple of things that you mentioned there. Our understanding so far, and so much of this we've been dependent on other reporting coming out of Thailand, but our understanding was that the UNHCR had declared her as a refugee, that she was recommended to go to Australia, and there was concern that Australians were not moving quickly enough, and so Canada was asked to step in, and so Canada said, okay, we will. So is that the same thing as the Prime Minister inserting himself into the story?
Well, the UNHCR does make declarations. They make their assessment. We have a process by which we make our assessment. The Australians were prepared, as I understand it, to accept her as a refugee claimant. What we did is go one step further and accepted her not as a claimant, but as a refugee. And that's a process that in Canada typically requires an assessment of the claim, a vetting of the individual, and a decision that typically can take as much as 2 years. All of that was sort of set aside, and rather than her going to Australia as a refugee claimant, which is where she was heading to go and where she has her friends and contacts, we kind of stepped into the middle and offered her immediate sanctuary, contrary to our processes and our procedures.
Let's talk.
Secondly, I think the other thing important here is that initially the Thai authorities seemed as though they were going to send her back to Kuwait. After speaking with the UNHCR representative, they said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to provide her safe haven here until we can figure all this out. And that's the process that was ongoing when we kind of intervened.
I want to talk to you about the impact this could have on the relationship between Ottawa and Riyadh. Our colleague Susan referred to this, that almost certainly it will not improve relations. And within the last year, this is now the second high-profile conflict, if we can describe it that way, between the two countries? Because you will recall that in the summer of last year, Chrystia Freeland put out a tweet saying that we stand behind Samar Badawi and Raif Badawi, who are these two Saudis, brother and sister. They have family here in Canada who are both being detained for their human rights activities. And as a result of that tweet, there was quite a bit of tension between the two countries. Ambassadors were pulled from their offices. Saudi students were told leave university campuses and get back to cities in Saudi Arabia. So are you concerned that this is just going to escalate all of that?
Well, I think we've pretty much gone about as low as we can go in the relationship. I mean, the Saudi regime will look upon this as, I believe, the Prime Minister inserting himself, making a concerted effort to insert himself into this story. They will look upon this as an affront to themselves and as Canada interfering in what they would view as a family dispute and in their internal affairs. There's no question that this is going to, if at all possible, deepen the divide between the two countries. And it's also going to further diminish any influence we may want to have on the evolution of human rights in the Saudi kingdom.
Okay, let's touch a bit more on that for just one moment, sir, and we are running out of time. But if Canada makes a commitment to human rights and Saudi Arabia has made less of a commitment to human rights, there are a number of Canadians across this country who would say, what does it matter? Why do we need Saudi Arabia's approval? We're doing the right thing.
Well, I think what we want to do is not to preach, not to be sanctimonious. What we're trying to do is to help an evolution in a country that is very, very different than any Western country. And to do that, you have to bring students to Canada, educate them, let them enjoy a very diverse and tolerant society and go back to Saudi Arabia. We've lost that opportunity. But you have to do this in an effective dialogue. You can't do it through tweets, and you can't do it by inserting yourself in high-profile news stories.
Okay. Sir, thank you so much for your insight and your time. We'll continue to follow the story and touch base with you again.